Hey everybody, welcome to Willow Talk. My name is Chris Baker, a longtime Willow fan, and with me is another longtime Willow fan.
Cameron Suey. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great, my friend. And he is my friend, but it's been a very long time, really, since we've talked about things, because we were coworkers. Where did we used to work?
LucasArts, formerly LucasArts, with Lucasfilm Games now, but almost 20 years ago, huh?
Yeah, back then I did PR. You were a producer and writer, as I recall, too, right? You kind of got your feet wet with...
You're very kind. I think I was technically a production assistant that they gave a pencil occasionally, but yes.
Yes. And yeah, we both started careers in the video game industry way back then, and I think we're both still part of it. You're writing games, right? Yeah.
I am. Technically, yes, now. Full credit, yeah.
Cool. And, Willow is a huge influence on us both. If you Google Willow, you might get a Taylor Swift song. You might get Willow Smith. You might get the Willow breast pump. Just for clarification here, we're talking about the 1988 movie, soon to be a TV show, starring Warwick Davis. And that's what this show's going to be all about, because we're both big Willow fans, and we were looking...
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we were... I don't know about you, Cameron, but like back when the trailers were coming out, like something I like to do a lot.
Yeah.
Something I personally like to do a lot.
I used to...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I used to watch Entertainment Tonight religiously as a weird little kid.
I meant the trailers for the show.
Oh my gosh! All right, let's...
Yeah, we'll rewind.
Let's do a clean break there.
It's fine. Yeah, back when the trailers for the show were coming out over the summer, a lot of times when something geeky like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, whatever, I'll go to YouTube. I'll go to like Screen Crush is one that I like, the Nerdist, things like that. But I wasn't seeing that for Willow at all. And I know people like us are out there. You're one of them probably if you're listening to this. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So, I don't know if we'll be like the foremost authority on breaking things down and whatnot, but I think we'll be okay at kind of offering interesting perspectives, I would hope. And maybe predictions and all that kind of fun stuff as this new show unravels.
And I think, we, like you said, we both sort of bonded working at LucasArts as being fans of Willow. And I remember as a kid being a fan of Willow. And when you're a kid, what you're into, everybody else is into. So you have no concept of that. But what I've noticed recently is that there are a great number of people who have never seen Willow or don't remember if they've seen it at all. It's not exactly a beloved cult classic these days. And... It's still sort of it seems sort of surreal to me that the machine has come this far around to making a Willow TV show.
Well, at the same time, I think the phrase cult classic there is interesting though, because I think a lot of people would classify it as a cult classic, but it was a major Hollywood release in 1988, right? It was one of the biggest movies of the year, I believe.
They absolutely expected it to be a successor to Star Wars. There were toys, there were everything. And then as soon as it came out, it's sort of all that hype vanished and disappeared.
Yeah. It never was, I lived through Return of the Jedi. I think I'm maybe a little older than you.
Just maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
That was...
And it was
my earliest film-going experience was Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it wasn't anything close to Return of the Jedi in terms of toys and hype and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was definitely something in a world where, believe it or not, Star Wars was kind of dead. There were other fantasy movies. You had your Krolls and your Legends and your Labyrinths and stuff like that.
Dark Crystal, all of which were also sort of huge financial failures, which led to Willow almost not being made because of all those flops before it. It was only the weight of George Lucas that got it to be made. Yeah,
and this wouldn't actually... It looks more expensive. I don't know how much more expensive it is than some of those other ones I named. I mean, Labyrinth and stuff they're way up there too. But if I look at Kroll, I enjoyed Kroll, but it's harder for me to watch just because doesn't look as...
I've rewatched Krull recently, yes. And I've rewatched Willow recently, and Willow holds up much better.
Okay.
But they're both movies that I remember quite fondly from my childhood. But yeah, I think you mentioned, the basics of the movie is a 1988 fantasy film directed by Ron Howard from a story by George Lucas. And something I didn't realize until I was looking into this is that it's based on a story that George Lucas had from the early 70s that he had been sort of percolating for a long time. And then he talked to an 11-year-old Warwick Davis on the set of Return of the Jedi about this idea he had. And the movie was really written for Warwick Davis. With
I've
him
heard
in
that
mind
as
to
well,
play the
yeah.
main character.
Yeah, and he was only, he was 16 or something when they filmed this?
17
okay.
When he stars in Willow. Not only carrying an entire movie, playing a father of what appears to be an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. Yes. It's really incredible. I kind of had to read that a couple times when I realized he was only 17.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's back up a bit and, going back to our LucasArts days when we bonded over Willow to a certain extent. Everybody bonded over Star Wars when we were there. Everybody there.
That's a real easy one to bond over.
Yeah.
But not everybody recognizes the Willow matte paintings hanging in the hallway.
We've got a really great story from Cameron here in a second. But one thing I remember, Cameron, I'm not sure if you do or not. Before there was a Nintendo Wii, there was a Nintendo Revolution, which is what the code name for the Nintendo Wii was. Everybody called it the Revolution.
Oh, okay. Yes.
When we heard about the controller, it was the Revolution controller. It wasn't the Wii remote yet. So, of course, everyone at LucasArts, like everyone outside of LucasArts, was really like, we should do a lightsaber game, That never happened.
Yeah, I think the first thing most people ever think of.
Yeah, exactly. That never happened, unfortunately. I think it was mainly technical reasons. But, at the same time, right after that, I was like, I think I said to you, I want to see, a Mad Mardigan prequel where you're swinging your sword like that the whole time. And I remember your eyes just lighting up, because I don't think we really had talked about Willow before then.
Yeah, that was the first time we sort of, signaled to each other that we were secret Willow fans.
Right.
Yes, no, I do. I remember that vividly, because... That was, everybody was talking lightsabers, but Mad Mardigan has this fascinating sword fighting style that you don't really remember, that involves flips and spins and all sorts of ridiculousness.
And he's got to have, a fascinating history that we really still don't know. I don't know. I haven't read the novelization. There might be something in there, but... yeah,
we'll get there. There's time for that in all the podcasts.
Yeah, maybe you do a game where it ends with him in the cage, right? Then, then comes the movie. But yeah, there was a particular moment at Star Wars Celebration 2005 in Indianapolis.
Ah, yes.
That we both shared, more so you, and I'm going to let you tell people about it right now.
Yes. We were coming back from Celebration. It was my first business trip, I think, ever. I had missed the flight out there and was embarrassed the entire time. And on the way back, we got stuck on the tarmac for 4 hours, which sounds horrible, but we had the good fortune of being stuck on the plane with Mr. Warwick Davis and his family.
Yes.
And I remember having a lovely little chat with them and showing him my brand new PlayStation Portable, which I had just waited in line for.
Yeah, it was a week or two old at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
I don't know how I kept myself from squealing the entire time and telling him I used to have a stuffed Wicket the Ewok as a teddy bear growing up, but I managed to be a professional.
I've hugged you many times. And... You just don't know it.
Yeah. Fortunately, that never came out of my mouth.
Yeah, I was...
But yeah, that was...
go ahead.
As a Willow fan... And as a Star Wars fan, that was a really lovely moment.
Yeah, I was probably 3 seats ahead of you. We were both in the aisle. And yeah, so I got this nice view of Mr. Davis just standing there next to you, looking at the PSP, being very interested in what he was looking at. You were giving an excellent demo. Yeah,
and we had sort of very briefly seen him beforehand as we were leaving the Lucas booth, and we said hi again. And he was a real gentleman. It was lovely.
Yeah. And then after he left and whatever, I don't know if you remember this, but I just turned to you and I went, awesome. Just like, and you're like
mouthing, yes, yeah. I do, because I wanted everyone to see what had just happened. The cool person had talked to me.
Yes, and then
so we've both rewatched Willow recently.
Indeed.
Before we get to that, think? Was this that you're?
Before we get to
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk a little bit more about like our history, like our own histories with the franchise, and like,
yeah,
we're both old enough where we were there when it came out. We were there,
yes,
for the whatever hype there was leading to it. Let's start there with the hype. Do you remember the first time you heard about this movie? Do you remember how
absolutely
excited you were?
As a weird little kid, I was a fan of Entertainment Tonight, and would avidly wait for them to show new. I figured you might be, fellow Willow fan. And I remember seeing just with sheer awe a short piece about the filming of the dragon sequence. And that was my first impression with it. And then I think I saw the trailer probably 10 more times because they played it at the end of Entertainment Tonight several times because they were really hyping it up to be this huge franchise. And I do believe that my parents ended up taking us not opening weekend, but the sort of matinee show the week after. Okay. Because I would not shut up about it. I was so excited.
Right. Yeah, side note, do you know the name of that dragon?
I do. This is something I just found out when I was looking this up. Do you want to say it?
It is the Ybor Sisk. And the reason for that is...
one head is named after Ebert and the other after Sisko.
Yes. Not the only movie critic that George Lucas takes a jab at in that. Do you know the other one?
That's right. The General Kale is named after Pauline Kael, the New York Times critic that had less love for Lucas. I think she actually really appreciated that cameo or that that homage. So but George Lucas is not always the most subtle man.
Right. Well, I think it's really cool, and I do think like probably Siskel and Ebert felt pretty honored, and obviously Kale did. But anyway,
I definitely
I remember the first time I heard about this movie, and again, this was a time when Star Wars was basically dead. The most recent Star Wars anything I think was the Ewok show that I think ended in like 86 maybe, and I used to listen to this oldies radio station that my mom listened to in the morning, and they probably like 4 or 5 months before the movie came out, they were talking about, and this George Lucas is working on this new movie called Willow. It's very secretive. That's all I knew for months. There was a movie called Willow. I didn't see any trailers. The next thing that I saw was just like promotional product attached to some food product or something, and it had like a character bio on it. And I remember like reading it and being like, okay, this, if you wanted to, this can fit into the Star Wars universe. So I was saying, Mom, it's possible Willow might be a new Star Wars movie. I'm not getting my hopes up. It's possible.
Because all the Star Wars movies had code names before that as well.
True. And, you could make a Star Wars movie, as we're seeing now, that in any corner of the universe about anything.
Yeah.
So, then the months a couple of months left in there. I had to do a book report, I remember, for The Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, not fantastically, but yes.
Okay, I am fantastically aware of this now. But if you've heard of the Disney movie The Black Cauldron, this is the much better book that movie is based off of. And we had to do a float, is what they call it. It's basically a diorama on a shoebox, more or less. And we had to reenact.
Sounds a lot more fun than a paper.
Reenact a scene from the Book of Three. And there was a character called the Horned King, and what he was a skeleton face with antlers. Kind of, he is a character in the movie, but
he's a very creepy image in the movie as well.
Exactly. So I had to figure out how to get the Horned King on my float, and as luck would have it, I was at 7-Eleven, and they had the Willow toys out. And there's General Kale, who is a skeleton face with little horny things coming out of his head. So
enough of a stand-in for the Horned King.
Yes. So right away, I'm really attached to this General Kale character because he was kind of the star of my float. Where I think for Taran, the protagonist, I just used my Luke Skywalker, and the princess, I used my Leia, who looks nothing like her. But yeah, there was this very
and that was a full set of Willow toys.
Yeah.
That they printed up expecting it to be as popular as Star Wars.
Not very good toys from Tonka. They couldn't even get Kenner on this one.
Oh boy.
Yeah, these Tonka toys, if you've never seen them, they're basically just little standy, kind of little stand-up things, about, I don't know, 3 inches tall maybe, and they don't have any articulation at all. So they're not the greatest thing to play with as a kid. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was like, yeah, I even tried to use them in my D&D campaign, but they're actually too big for that. So, like, they're useless in that regard as well. Funny enough, there's
Goldilocks, no place for them.
Recently been Super 7 reaction figures. This reaction line is like figures basically based on Kenner early 80s Star Wars stuff. And so you can get Willow figures that look like they should have looked. If a better
alternate universe Willow figures.
Yeah, although they were Tonka tough, I suppose. So going into seeing the movie, I had this like hope that it was a Star Wars movie, which is ridiculous. I had this connection to this book report for really my favorite series of children's fantasy is the Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain. It's called. That was the first book of it. Yeah. So yeah, that was all great. And then I remember my uncle took me. I think it was opening night. He took me, and it was just a great theatrical experience. Everyone there seemed to love it. Some of the jokes that would be very corny now, your mother was a lizard, like that brought the house down.
Yeah, it's a very broad movie, but I also remember a sort of a similar chaotically positive energy the first time I saw it. I do remember not being ready for the horrifying sequences in that movie as a 9-year-old. And there's a portion later, and we'll talk about it, that gave me a lifelong fear when Mad Mardigan is turned painfully into a pig. And going back and watching again, it's just as horrifying as I remember. Like it is.
I've always just thought it was cool.
Body horror.
It is.
Oh my God.
It's totally body horror. Yeah.
It's one of the few things that still gives me the shivers now. But I actually, so I had watched this movie. Sorry, should we talk about our modern
let's just say, like, you saw the movie, and then, the dust settled a little bit. Like, what did your friends think? Did you talk to your friends about the movie at all back then? And
I don't remember anybody having a disagreement with me about anything. We were all excited about the same things. But I do remember that it was usually only my sister and I that would rent it on VHS in the intervening years to come. It wasn't something that was in popular rotation at slumber parties. Right. It wasn't something that a lot of people were interested in. But I remember my sister and I over and over again, and she still, can quote half the Brownie lines in the movie to me. She and I had watched it a whole bunch in the intervening years, but it just sort of, once it didn't have that sort of big Star Wars splash, it feels like everybody sort of mostly forgot about it.
Yeah, I would say I had a similar experience. Actually, I do remember the Monday morning going back to school. It's that time of school where it's almost over and everyone's like, you get that, it wasn't senioritis in 5th grade, but, whatever that leaving elementary school.
The elementary school version.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do remember, like, talking about it just, like, during recess, and I remember one kid was like, he just loved the scene where one of the brownies does the Dust of Broken Hearts and starts sweet talking the cat. He thought that was the most hysterical thing he's ever seen. But yeah, everyone really enjoyed it who saw it. But yeah, after that day, it wasn't really something that came up in conversation a lot.
Yeah, which is all the more surprising to me that it got a reboot, and it sort of makes it feel sort of slightly special that this strange little reboot is just for me.
It does, doesn't it?
Just for you as well.
I mean,
yeah, it seems unlikely and very targeted.
I think if I had been given the choice, like at the beginning of the whole Disney Plus thing, okay, you're going to get a Willow show or a Star Wars show, I'd probably go Star Wars. But I think it's pretty great that we're still getting.
Absolutely. I mean, if I was a betting man, I would have put money against a Willow show.
Yeah, I mean,
I
don't see us getting the Radioland Murders follow up. Maybe we will. I don't know.
At this point, I don't know that I can.
For
count
those who
that out.
don't know, that's a very obscure George Lucasfilm movie from like '93-ish year. I don't know, somewhere around there. I liked it when I saw it. I don't remember anything about it, but anyway.
That's another podcast.
Yeah. Do you remember anything else in the wake of the release?
No. In fact, we talked about how Willow sequel novels came out in the 90s. And I was just utterly unaware of those as well. I had no idea that those came out, even though they were written by Chris Claremont of X-Men.
Yes. There were 3 books. I read the first one. I audiobooked the second one. And the third one, I just saw like on the, if you work in an office, sometimes there's like a free table, take stuff. And the third one I didn't even know came out. So I grabbed it. I still have it. I haven't read a page of it though.
Well, it's going for about $100 on eBay if you'd like to. Or you can send it to me because I have bought the first 2 copies and I'm going to read the first 2 books.
Yeah, you told me that, and I went back and looked, and apparently there is no audiobook version of the third one, so maybe that's the reason it's more expensive, because people just can't bring themselves to read these words.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, and even the audiobooks are abridged, because it was like in the books on tape days where you had to get it done in 3 hours and flat, and that sort of thing. And you can listen to those on YouTube, by the way. Yeah, there's also the game. Did you play the NES game that came out after the movie?
I did not, but I had a friend who had it and didn't let me play it. That's my only recollection of it.
Yeah, I loved it. It's great. It's like a Legend of Zelda style. I like to say that it's kind of like what you would have expected Zelda 2 to be if there hadn't been a Zelda 2 that exists. It's very much a happy medium between The Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past. Like, there's more like talking to people and that sort of thing. It even has fast travel. Like, games back then didn't really have fast travel. But the story, it just completely, maybe we should do like just a side episode about the game.
Depending on how deep dive of it.
Yeah, they completely changed the lore of it. I actually recently talked about that on a video game podcast called Vigigame Apocalypse. I guess we can link to it in the show notes. I've never said that before. I always wanted to. Link in the show notes. We can say that now. I
can write show notes.
But anyway, so we had the games came out a couple of years later, and there's apparently a cult following of those. Oh, there was an arcade game that I never even saw anywhere ever.
I only know I looked it up and it does
on
not
the internet.
ring a bell at all.
There was a PC game that was awful, but it did follow the plot very well. That's all it had going for it.
It's as a franchise, Willow hasn't had quite of a long and storied history. Yeah,
and of course, in 2005 we had our great encounter with Mr. Davis. Actually, in 2002, I went to Star Wars Celebration 2 in Indianapolis as well, shortly before the release of Attack of the Clones. And he hosted like I want to say it was like a Q&A kind of thing, like just really loose. I remember he did this rap from Leprechaun 4 that he apparently did in the Leprechaun 4 movie. He did it on stage.
Yeah, that would be Leprechaun in the Hood.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's the one. Yes. That's all I know about it. But I do remember, like, people were asking, like, would you ever want to do Willow again? He's like, yeah, absolutely. And he even talked about the books a little bit. He was like, I know there's books out there, and they change his name to Thorn Drumheller or something, which is something they do, which is really doesn't make any sense. So that was a cool, just kind of, it was a really different con environment too, because you could actually just show up and sit down, whereas today if you go to Star Wars Celebration, that's half your day is waiting to see a Warwick Davis Q&A.
I enjoyed working conventions, and I will never, ever, ever go to a convention again.
Yeah, it's a different time now. But yeah, so I think that kind of brings us, and there's like just nothing for a long time, right? Like,
yeah, it's like I said, the fact that this sort of the remake machine has come around to this, forgotten and less loved property is sort of a special treat to us, and I'm going to treat it that way.
I guess there was a certain degree of Willow mini fandom I discovered when the social media age came along. Like, if you mention Willow,
right, when those small communities can suddenly find each other. Yes.
Yeah. So there was that, and like you would see people throw a GIF up or something, and appreciate that, and I'd give it a like unless it was derogatory, which could happen because people are very dismissive of Willow. But yeah, so I guess that kind of brings us to where we are today, and I think we both
revisiting the movie.
Yeah, we have.
Hang on a sec. Let me do a clean break here. So we both recently rewatched the movie for this podcast, and I was sort of struck by a whole bunch that I didn't notice the last time I watched this, which was sort of over my shoulder as my kids were watching it on Disney Plus. And I'm wondering, did anything jump out at you about this time that you didn't notice the first time?
Actually, let me go back. When's the last time you did see it? Like, when's the last time you actually sat down and watched the movie?
The last time I actually sat down and watched it has got to be 25 years ago with my sister on VHS. Like I said, I played it for my kids recently, but I played that mostly as a ruse for me to be able to do the dishes at the time, or do some other housework. So I didn't really sit down and pay attention to it. So this is the first time really in 25 years.
Yeah, for me, it was about 2.5 years ago after my daughter was born, because I just felt like this connection, having a young baby girl. Like, I really wanted to. I couldn't think of another movie that had that kind of connection as much, and it gave me this
especially
yearning to see Willow.
Especially having like a fantasy film that starts with a young protagonist who's already a father, and that's part of what makes it was notable. So the thing that really jumped out at me this time that I watched it is that the entire movie is entirely from the perspective of the Nelwyns, which is the people that Willow come from. And the very brief time we see the Daikini, the tall people, at the beginning, they're sort of this terrible dungeon sequence, and it's very brief. And then we entirely see the Nelwyn village. We see ordinary life. We see farms. And when they talk about the Daikini, which they never call humans, they say Daikini, they refer to them not as, regular or tall people. They refer to them as giants.
Yeah.
And then even within that frame, there are brownies that are much shorter than the Nelwyns that play the sort of traditional comic relief. And then the Nelwyns are allowed to be played totally straight as heroes. And we see only sort of like, we see community, we see those like that cool party that they're having. And then it's such in stark contrast when they leave their little village and go into the Daikini world, and everybody's horrible. Everybody's mean.
Yeah.
Instantly, like, everybody's using racial slurs against them the first time they come out. And not only that, everybody is artificially taller than them. Val Kilmer, you first see him way up in a cage. The next characters you see are all on horseback. And then when Willow goes into the bar, which once I noticed this sort of tall motif is very strange because the bar is 3 stories tall inside. Like, there's the staircases.
Yeah.
And the first thing you see is Willow looking up at 2 Daikini sitting on other Daikini's shoulders, hitting each other with maces. Like, they're the tallest possible things they could be. The movie is so consistent about being from Willow's perspective. And I thought now that I realized how much it was written for him with him in mind, like, that really makes sense. And it was really cool to notice it this time around. But yeah, like, the Daikini are all very awful and not really likable characters compared to these really heroic and lovable and like fully featured Nelwyn characters.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I mean, even the last scene at Knockmar Castle, all the Bavmordas people are at the very top of the castle, looking down on Willow, who's looking up at them. Yeah, that's a really...
All her spaces are hugely stretched out and tall. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think that's completely intentional direction there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give them credit for it because it is consistent the way it works. It's bizarre to me how fast the genre shifts. Like, it's a very upbeat and like lightly frothy comic fantasy, with the exception of 2 or 3 scenes which are just momentarily horrifying.
Sure.
Mad Mardigan's intro is, there is like whistling horrible monsters in the background and mist. Like, it's a horror movie for 2 minutes. It's
even the
it's
opening is very dark. Got to kill these babies.
Yes. Yeah, the dogs eat a nursemaid in the first 2 minutes. It's pretty frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, speaking of the dogs, this is something else that really struck me. This movie has dogs, trolls, and dragons that are unrecognizable as dogs, trolls, or dragons.
Yeah, that struck me too.
Like the dogs are actually Rottweilers in these, bizarre face masks with those tails. The trolls, it's such a bizarre take on trolls, the way they climb on the walls. And then, the dragon, of course, is such a bizarre and unique design. I'm not sure how much it was intentionally designed to look like Clint Howard, but supposedly in an attempt to find a cameo for his brother, he told them to make the dragon look like Clint Howard's face.
The one that's named after Siskel and Ebert. Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I had that was definitely something that I noticed as well. And I think my kind of view on it is like that, Lucas and Howard kind of obviously took from very popular fantasy that exists, right? But the Nelwyns,
the story is,
the Nelwyns themselves they're kind of hobbits, but they're also kind of dwarves. They're kind of an in between, because they have like this war culture as well that you can tell that Vonkar.
Yeah, there's the warriors among them. Yeah, Vonkar.
Whereas like in the Shire, you're not going to see that.
Yeah, and I think they're they're sort of most like the hobbits, because the dwarves. Yeah, there's always sort of othering from the dwarves. They live in caves. It's very strange, but like somebody who has a farm and has a guy who's trying to steal, trying to buy his land out from under him. It's like the most simple and recognizable.
Yeah, the hero goes out with his best friend to try to do this simple thing.
Who's totally
first,
Sam.
Right? Yeah.
The story really, is just a very simple, like, monomyth version of it's basically halfway between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. It's, leave the farm, get the weapon, and take the object to the quest. Yeah,
but going back to those character designs though, like we were saying, like the trolls don't look like trolls. Actually, I found it very convenient that the kid, like, he's like, "Are you gonna see fairies and trolls? I hate trolls. And humans are." He mentions like every character type that he's dragons. Like he mentions every character type.
It's everything that they're going to see.
It's literally everything. But anyway, I do think that a lot of people don't kind of appreciate maybe how it is like the same idea, and it's familiar in that regard. But that dragon is very distinct. The trolls are very distinct. General Kale, even like that
visual,
like General Kale's design is just awesome, and you can tell like maybe if they had more time or whatever, like they wanted him to be a new Darth Vader kind of thing in some regards.
I wonder how much of the world building is sort of deliberate, or the cost of production and having to shave things away. But it does feel, slightly smaller scale. Like, it doesn't feel like a widescreen epic. There are very few widescreen shots until they're leaving the village, and then after that, there's not that many. But I noticed that the design, there's some fascinating stuff in the design of the different cultures. We really only vaguely hear about the Galadorn and then the Nockmaar people, but the armor and the sort of like cultural things that they're wearing, none of them are medieval knights. Like, some of them are mixes of like Roman designs with like plumes on the head and scale mail. Sorsha's armor and helmet looks like a Mongolian helmet, and she's actually carrying a Mongolian recurve bow. So like there's a lot of not necessarily Western medieval aesthetics blended in there, and I don't really get a strong sense of where they were pulling from each one. So I'm gonna have to start the new show, really watching how they take that sort of world building with the
and
design
to that end, I think that
forward.
speaks in their weapons too are very diverse and not quite exactly like if you look at Sorsha's sword. I love that sword that she has that kind of has the jagged teeth on it on one side, and exactly what it's for.
Or Eric, who has the gauntlet sword that's like built into the gauntlet of his arm.
And Kale's
there's some really fascinating
Kale's sword, which I know mostly through looking at Awful Toy, has like kind of two guards on it. Like most swords have the kind of guard at the hilt to protect the
it has the crossbar.
and there's like two more extending upwards from it. I've never seen that before, but it actually makes sense in a way for a huge
there's
dude
some
like
really
that. I think I just
some sort
really
of
appreciate the
unusually
design.
thoughtful design.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that really leapt out at me this time is I don't know about you, but when I went in to see the movie the first time, I had seen the trailer 1,000 times. I had seen Mad Mardigan spin a sword 1,000 times. I've heard Willow say, "You are great."
Yeah, that was in all of the commercials.
That, that's. So I knew Mad Mardigan was a swordsman. So when he spends the first hour of the movie saying, "I'm a great swordsman," never picking up a sword, never doing anything heroic, only looking out for himself, and just generally being a horrible person. Like, it's actually kind of a very funny joke that when he picks up a sword, he wasn't lying about that.
Yeah.
Because he's been lying about half of everything else.
Huh, that's true.
But with a trailer, you have no all expectation that he's going to be who he says he is because you've already seen that part. So I reflected on how much the trailer sort of robbed me of that cool twist that you would have thought Mad Mardigan is just this awful dude for the first hour of the film before I think the first heroic thing he does is when they are both captured, they make it clear that he didn't give up Willow, and then he picks up Willow and puts him on his shoulders when they're walking. Like before that, there's almost nothing likable that he does.
Yeah, and I think even that itself is like that's pretty good filmmaking in itself. Is just like there's no words exchanged, but it is like a character defining moment. He like Mad Mardigan in his heart of hearts is actually a good guy. He's a Han Solo-esque rogue.
Film, he is. By the end of the film, he's even settled down. He's going to be raising Elora Danan. Mm-hmm. So he goes through a pretty big change from the like sort of awful jerk that he is in the first hour. In fact, the first time you meet another Daikini, that person sees Mad Mardigan in the cage and says, "I'm actually going to leave you there. You probably deserve being in a cage." Like, so we even get outside confirmation that he's a jackass.
And that's like. You have to infer that's actually one of his best friends too in Eric, at least like one of his best associates. I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this is not a man who has made friends.
I believe the guy who looks like Val Kilmer in the new show is named Eric. I believe I heard his name is Eric.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, so...
I have deliberately watched almost nothing about the new show. I'm going to go in as cold as possible.
Yeah, I haven't watched a whole lot, but I did see just this kind of fun video that some of the stars went out and been like, "Hey, you guys looking forward to Willow?" And just getting the blank really reactions on people's faces.
I love that they're playing up that aspect of that nobody's seen it. Nobody remembers. The one last thing that I thought was really sort of striking about the movie this time is that magic plays such a big part in it, but magic almost never works or is what people say it is. The High Aldwin is clearly lying all the time. Yeah. He rolls the bones and he whispers to Willow, "The bones tell me nothing." Man.
I love that. That's so funny. Yeah.
And then it's fantastic. It's great writing and a great performance from Billy Barty. But it's not magic, but he presents it as magic. Then later he throws up the bird and says, "Follow the bird," and the bird doesn't go the right way. Willow saves the day through not his actual magic. His acorns fail. Mm-hmm. He doesn't use the wand. He uses magician's sleight of hand,
which he failed at himself. Is something I noticed. Like when he did that trick, he failed at it. So in a certain way, this was the perfection of his disappearing pig trick when it really counted.
Exactly. I watch this with my wife, who I love her to death, but she is incredible about catching foreshadowing in movies. So Willow does the pig trick in the beginning, and she goes, "Oh, so that will be important later." And Willow says, "I hate trolls," and she says, "Oh, so they'll be." She just she has a sixth sense for like screenplay construction.
Did she call any of the acorn stuff? Because that really doesn't. When I saw it the first time, I thought it would come into play more than it did.
No, she completely forgot about that. And actually, that's another thing where magic doesn't work. He has 3 acorns. He uses 2 of them. One he drops and turns a board into stone, and the other one just flat out doesn't work.
And the other was used in a deleted scene I just read today, actually.
Yes.
And it did work.
Yes.
That one did work, apparently.
No, I just watched the deleted scene. It's the same thing. He drops it on the boat, and it turns one of the boards.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing I read said that...
It's pretty much the exact same gimmick.
The thing I read said that it hit the monster, and the monster sank to the bottom. So maybe that's what the script was. And then
I think that might have been the intent, yeah.
Okay.
They've got not full featured footage of it, though. But yeah, I generally was impressed by how much there is that's unique about Willow. That really made it stand out, especially from the other fantasy movies at the time. I mean, all those are all great movies, but I think I was sort of shocked by how much this fully goes for the perspective of Willow for the entire movie.
And the 2 biggest magic users, Bab-Morda and Fin Raziel, are women. I think that's a fairly unique thing. They're Gandalf and Saruman/Sauron, basically.
And that's a fight that's incredibly reminiscent of the Saruman and Gandalf fight. If there wasn't a direct homage there, I'd be shocked.
Even Sherlindria.
I also do love that.
Sherlindria reminds me of Galadriel. There's that part where she comes back and she's not quite as scary as Galadriel is, but it feels the same type of.
Her face gets enormous.
Yeah,
it's
and scarier.
It's very slightly threatening.
Right. Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you?
I remember at the time hearing so much about the technology of morphing that they use for the climactic and slightly horrifying transformation sequence. And it's funny how rough and raw it looks here when it's a technology we are just so intimately used to at this point.
A lot of people could probably do that stuff on their computer in 2 days right now.
I'm probably sure we could do it on our phones.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
The scale of technology.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I thought was an interesting parallel here, that it dawned on me at the very beginning. So much like George Lucas himself and Star Wars, the wife is the secret hero. If Kaya had not taken the baby, Willow would have just let it go along. Of course,
he's the one who says push.
Of course, it's well documented now that Marsha Lucas basically saved Star Wars, right? Like, if she had not cut in, it would have been a much worse movie. And she basically made it the great film that it is in many ways. So Kai is kind of Marsha Lucas, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I buy your
theory. Yeah. It's not a theory. It's just a funny observation that I think is interesting. They were divorced by this point.
Do you have any hopes and predictions for the upcoming Willow show?
Hopes. I hope it's good. That would be the first thing that I hope. I generally like what I've seen so far. I see where it could be good. I see where it could go off the rails a bit, but I'm sure I will enjoy it for the most part, just because I do enjoy the Willow character so much, and just like seeing Sorsha there. I know we can't see Membardigan, sadly, but I hope they're able to.
I'm not entirely certain about that. Yeah? I think he's involved in some way.
Well, that would be a cool. I think it's interesting they have Christian Slater coming in, because if you think about it, like circa 1980.
I'm sorry, say again?
Oh, you didn't know this? Christian Slater.
No, sir. I
is part of the cast. Yes, Christian Slater is part of the cast.
Sounds great.
And if you go back to 1988, I would say Christian Slater maybe wasn't quite to Val Kilmer level, but pretty close in that general time frame, they're kind of on par.
Yes, yeah.
You know, fame.
Rising heartthrob status.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's a good one. I don't really know what his character is. Actually, I think his character is called Allagash, which is a beer also. So, yeah.
So I've sort of kept myself from seeing anything about the new show other than just a few clips. There are a couple of actors that I know, like Aaron Kellyman, that I just are fantastic. But I was trying to think what I expect, and I realized that the story of the movie Willow is entirely enclosed. I mean, there's, I guess, some unknown about, you know, what happens in Tir Asleen after he leaves. But he ties a neat bow on that story, and he says, goodbye, everybody, and he walks straight back to his village. So as far as, like, prediction, clearly Elora Danan will be, you know, a part of the story. And
which is interesting, because
I can't...
Yeah, sorry. Elora Danan is not someone they've named as a cast member. They've kind of insinuated recently that maybe one of the other characters is her in disguise or something. Okay. Yeah, from the start, you know, there's a tweet I put up back when that hilarious video where it just talks to the cast. And I put up a tweet, and I'm like, you know, that one guy's got to be Val Kilmer's or Mad Mardigan's son, right? And he is. We know that now. But I was like, but where's Elora? None of these characters are Elora. So, you know, and they haven't identified who Elora is. Apparently, that's something we'll find out fairly early, I hear. But yeah, that's it will be interesting. And I will say, having read the book Shadow Moon, part of the Shadow trilogy by George Lucas and X-Men legendary writer Chris Claremont. First of all, forget that exists if you've read it, because nothing's going to tap into that.
I can't. I'm going to have to read it now. Didn't you tell me that there was something particularly strange about the beginning of this? So
this, well, for factually speaking, I know it's not going to happen, because in the first 30 pages of the first book of that trilogy, an event occurs called the Cataclysm. Cataclysm, just a huge mega earthquake that completely destroys Tir Asleen. In the process of completely destroying Tir Asleen, it magically, as I recall, it's been 25 years or so since I read this book, but it magically teleports Elora Danan as a baby, like a 1 or 2 year old, to the other side of the world, where she's raised by some other royal family somehow. I forget the details there exactly. But the thing that really sucks is that Mad Mardigan and Sorsha die. I think Finrazel might have died too. So your favorite characters Willow are just immediately destroyed. And the thing about
sort of an Alien 3 opening.
Yeah. And you know, so Willow, who starts out as a dream. It's a dream with... Actually, here, I have the book with me right here. I'm going to show it to you, Cameron, on our video chat here. Shadow Moon. First of all...
I've got a copy coming through eBay.
There's a knight on the cover. I have no idea who that is. There's a character on the back.
That doesn't look...
I have no idea who that is.
There's nothing on that says it's about Willow at all.
No, there isn't.
What attracted Shadow Moon?
What attracted me to this book? I remember it was summer of 1995. I was in Walden Books, maybe B. Dalton, one of those small bookstores, and I saw in huge letters George Lucas and Chris Claremont. Now, in 1995, you know, George Lucas can get my attention no matter what, but Chris Claremont, I was like,
those are
huge X-Men fan at the time, right? So I'm like, okay, fantasy from George Lucas and Chris Claremont. Let me open this book. The very first sentence is one of my favorite sentences in literature, I must say. In the middle of the night, Willow Ufgood rode the back of a dragon. I'm in, right?
Hey,
like that's
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I am paying my
you're not, why start off with anything less than a bang?
I'm paying my $22.50 in 1995 money, which is probably closer to $40 now. and I'm buying this book, and I'm spending my summer reading it and trying to convince myself that I like it, but right away my favorite characters are dead.
and the rest are dream riding dragons.
And Willow changes his name because in the dream that he has, the riding the dragon was a dream apparently, and he saw the last moments of his friends in a dream, and Sorsha just for some reason says, "You don't really seem like a Willow anymore. You're more like Thorn Drumheller." So the book is about Thorn Drumheller.
That is unhinged.
Yes. And
what fantastic branding to change the title character of your movie in the follow-up trilogy.
Yeah,
amazing.
And he has the brownies with him. Like, I don't remember why. I think the Cataclysm, like, maybe it does something to his family, or he leaves his family to go on this adventure of whatever it's supposed to be. And he has the brownies with him, and they aren't even anything close to funny or slapsticky, or they're just like straight up like boring companions, and the whole tone is so dark. And the one thing we've discussed in the past, Cameron, I know is like Willow is just such a happy, feel good.
It's so lighthearted.
Like it's the kind of thing that used to be a cliche, but now is kind of stands out because it's not dark, and it's not, it's not the kind of thing where you worry about every character is going to die every episode. As much as I love Game of Thrones, and I do, it's nice to have
at my time.
Yeah, go for it.
At this time of my life, this is much more what I'm looking for, as opposed to the Game of Thrones model. Is something built on kindness and a sense of fun, and as goofy and as silly as the movie is, it tonally works all the way through. So as far as my hopes for the upcoming show, I guess I'm excited to see it, but I'm also, if I don't like it, that's going to be fine too, because it's not going to change the original movie for me. Because I truly believe that the most important canon is your own head canon.
Yeah.
Because, these properties are controlled by huge shifting organizations. Only you gets to decide what's real and what's not. So if you don't want Willow to be, what was it?
Oh,
what was
Thorn Drumheller. Yes.
Yeah, that's so. Don't make
which
that.
Apparently
let's not make
Warwick
that a
Davis
part of
was
our
open to
headcanon.
back in 2002 when he did that Star Wars Celebration. But
Not
I think
part of
he'd
my
be happier
headcanon.
being Willow. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
any sort
So
of darkness. Maybe this is just maybe called a prediction. I don't know, and maybe it's even something that's out there. But it's just kind of I get the impression that he's kind of Luke Skywalker sequel trilogy ish, where he's like a recluse and maybe doesn't want to go save the world.
Well, that makes sense. The first movie was about like a father who had responsibilities, choosing to do something greater. It would make sense to, age that character and have an appropriately, adult and, middle-aged Nelwyn storyline.
It'd be hilarious is like there's a line in the Willow movie where he's like, where Burgle cuts like, and while you're out here, you think about what's happened to your crops. And so like his crops are messed up now, right? Like when he gets back home, he might be ruined after this adventure, right?
So
like
that truly was clawing at me as a kid watching this the first time. And I remember the sense of relief coming home when like he's still got a farm. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Right.
Yeah, but he very clearly has a responsibility.
Yeah.
Hopefully Migosh helped out.
Yeah. So yeah, that it would be funny if that happened, but not in a good way. So I don't want to see that happen. But yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure in some way he had to like do sorcerer stuff, right? Because like that was the next step for him, is to be a great sorcerer.
Yeah, Finn Rizal hands him the spell book. And
can I get?
Goes off
I gotta ask a question
way.
that stood out to me. Like,
yeah.
So he gets to Sherlindria, right? And Sherlindria is like, "Here's my wand, give it to Finn Rizal." So he does that. Finn Rizal uses it, and he uses some, and then it's his, right? Like, does Sherlindria just not have a wand now? Like, do we not want to give that back to her? Like, it seems like...
I mean, it kind of seemed like maybe she didn't need it so much. She had a forest.
But it's a big deal. Like,
fairies.
I have Shalindria's wand, Bavmorda. This is a legendary artifact of this world. Oh, here's a fun side note. The world.
Yeah.
Never named in the movies. I kind of skimmed the book.
Yeah, it's just called The Realm.
Yeah. I kind of skimmed through the novelization to see, like, places where they might name the world. Never name it. But I do know that the world is called Anduin. Warwick Davis said it in the D23 little thing that he did. The name Anduin comes from a 2006 April Fool's joke on StarWars.com. Do you remember this? Are you familiar with this at all?
I think that I do. Is this Pablo Hidalgo?
This is our friend Pablo Hidalgo, who is kind of a big name over at Lucas these days. But back then he was just the editor of StarWars.com doing a fun April Fool's joke where he did like these Star Wars databank bios for all the Willow characters. And he threw in some of the stuff from the books. And he named the world Anduin. I have a Twitter thread somewhere where I'm like, did you make that up? Or where did that come from? And he's like, I think I made it up. And I just wanted it to sound like fake Tolkien. But like, it seems like the official name of the world is Anduin from an April Fool's joke. If you go to the Willow Wiki, it kind of says the same thing. So I think that's hilarious. And good on you, Pablo Hidalgo, because actually Pablo Hidalgo now is someone who would name that stuff. Like he's probably someone they would go to for that. So this is like a very early example of him like being the proto hit Pablo that he's become. That's just part of me thinks that's awesome. Part of me thinks it's kind of lazy, but it's But no, I think that's just funny.
I think I almost prefer it not being named. There's so much in the movie that is just not given a name, and that's so sort of contrary to the traditional fantasy thing, which is I'm going to name every character here and every city on the map and yada yada.
Yeah, I think they looked for the name of the inn, and it's just unnamed. It's just an inn.
it's just the Daikini Inn.
It's not the Prancing Pony or anything. It's just an inn.
Nope.
Yep.
Just a place where they'll threaten to eat and kill an Elwyn if he comes in.
Exactly. Which it actually occurred to me that's the Mos Eisley of this world, right? And get out of here. Yeah. Get out of here.
That's the cantina scene.
Is basically he's a droid, essentially to them.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I don't know. Do you have any other predictions or thoughts and hopes? And
no, I'm excited to look at it right after following off the movie. I'm excited to see if they follow up with those things that I noticed about perspective. But I'm also just excited to see if I like it or not.
Yeah.
And if I don't, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that we'd like to do with this show, if we can, is try to get guests on who are part of it.
Yes.
I will see. I can't make any promises. We have certain connections that could help us, but we don't want to promise anything. We will say also that this is just a fun thing for us to do as two friends, and we're not like out to be the first Willow podcast on your favorite podcast carrier. So if it's the weekend before you see this pop up in your feed, then that's probably because we both have kids that we have to deal with. And well, not deal with.
Like Willow, we are two dads with responsibilities.
Yes, exactly. So, we do plan to see it through the entire season, and hopefully we like it. Gonna run something by you, Cameron, see what you think. So, one of the we've decided on the name Willow Talk, by the way, for this show through a a Twitter poll.
Democracy.
Yeah, through democracy. And one of the names I thought of that I thought was kind of funny, but it works better when you say it than when you read it, is So Uffin Good, a Willow podcast. So, my thought on how we can do like a rating after every episode. One of three things.
Oh, absolutely.
But here, this is our rating scale, right? So, there's good, which is part of the Uff Good, right? There's Uff, which means we weren't really feeling it. And there's Uffin Good.
That's straight Burgle.
There's Uffin Good. Uffin Good.
Okay.
An Uffin Good episode was like one of the most Uffin Good episodes you've ever seen, you know? So that's our 3-point scale.
I will stick to this rating.
All right.
I will actually be excited if there's a Burgle Cut cameo. That's something I'm looking forward to. I noticed we briefly talked about it, but I'm a huge fan of the show on FX called Reservation Dogs, which among its other fantastic jokes, one of the jokes in it is that everybody has seen Willow, and one of the main characters is named Laura Dannon. There's a shop nearby called Burgle Cut Salvage.
Oh, that's amazing.
There are frequent references to other Willow things, but the most important thing is that everybody in the movie, when asked, has seen Willow, unlike reality. But it's a fantastic show. A high recommendation.
So it's kind of a fantasy show in its own right because of this idealistic
for
utopia
that one aspect. Yeah. Well, not necessarily. Just for the Willow part.
Ah, fair enough.
But yeah, it's a phenomenal show with some incredible actors. So
cool. All right, I think. Wait, Cameron, is your phone ringing right now? What's that going on?
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. Hang on a sec. Oh, yeah. Hey, Warwick, what's up? No, that's fine. I didn't think it was. No, it's fine. Next time though. Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. All right. Hey, so we're probably not going to have.
Did you say Warwick? Did you say Warwick? What?
I don't. Like you said, I don't want to promise anything. So, that's nothing.
Did you like exchange numbers on the plane or something back then? What?
I mean, maybe, but like you said, we're gonna try to get some guests.
I mean, even if that was Warwick Davis somehow, like we're out of time. We gotta go. It's like it's midnight for me. I gotta go.
Called in too late anyway. I mean, if it was
okay.
But I guess I'll see you in a week after we have digested our first episode of Willow, the TV show.
Indeed, and hopefully it is so Uffin Good that Willow talk about it.
I also hope to give it 2 Uffin Goods.
You're getting a little too Eborsisk there now with the thumbs ratings. But
right,
everybody, thank you so much.
Asking me to do this.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys
thanks for listening.
Enjoyed it as well. Social media and stuff. I've set up. If Twitter's still around when you're when you're listening to this, A Willow Podcast on Twitter, A Willow Podcast on Instagram, A Willow Podcast on YouTube if we put it up there. And I've started a Patreon page. I don't know if I want to do that, but give us some feedback maybe if you think you'd be into Patreoning stuff like this. We do need to pay a little bit to
yell at us on Twitter if you like. We love it.
But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. And wow, there's got to be like some kind of Willow-esque way we can end. Cameron, can you think of any like lines?
Some sort of like cool. I mean, I can think. Forget the bird, follow the river. But I'm just gonna follow the path to my bed and go to sleep after this. So that's not.
That's right. Forget the.
No, we got to think about this.
This is Chris and Cameron saying,
an outro.
Forget the bird, follow the river. Unless the bird's going in the right direction. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time.
In which case, follow the bird.
Bye everybody.